Welcome into the Hot Read Podcast, live from London. I'm your host, Easton, Director of Published Content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton. I'm joined, as always, by producer JT. You can follow on social media at JT_Ruhnke. JT, how are we doing?
Oh, we're doing pretty good for being 45-ish minutes late.
Yeah, just a bit of a whiffle, isn't it? Just, just a little late.
Just a smidge,
Listen, we're very far away from home, and technical difficulties arise sometimes. And listen, we're a little late. I mean, it's late here. It is a quarter to midnight for us in London, so it's late here. It is a quarter to 6, I believe, for those of you in Nashville and in the Central Standard Time Zone. Appreciate all of you that are with us live today. Excited to talk Titans-Ravens ahead of Titans-Ravens here in London at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Sunday morning for you all, afternoon for us. And then we'll get to the best bet Gauntlet week 6, a big redemption week for us, JT. Our first bad week of the year last week. It's going to happen. We're going to have probably one or two more of those the rest of the year. That's how it works. You know, the public gets it right 40% of the time. We get it right 60% of the time. You got to take your lumps, but we're ready to bounce back. And for those of you that join us live, appreciate you being here. Austin in the comments with a question. Do we think Derek is going to walk out of the tunnel in historically accurate King Henry garb? A fantastic question. I'd put the line on that at plus 850. Certainly not impossible, but unlikely. I will be taking any and all bets. Just Venmo me and let me know which side you'd like to take. He should, for the record. He absolutely should. William in the comments as well. Appreciate you guys being with us live. We won't bore you with our London trip thoughts for more than, I promise, like 3 minutes. But just to kind of set the stage before we talk Titans-Ravens. I chronicled on Twitter a bit about how I had a just nightmare of a time getting over here. What should have been about 9 hours of travel start to finish turned into about 21 hours of travel start to finish. I was up for like 28, 29 straight hours, 3 or 4 delays and cancellations, and it was the worst. And we lost some luggage as well. It was great. It was awesome. Thank you, American Airlines and British Airlines. You suck. But we're here eventually, got there, and then I got here, and I think a combination of the jet lag plus the fact that I hadn't slept in over 24 hours, plus the fact that I was dehydrated, led to me dealing with some serious like jet lag vertigo and was extremely ill for like 6 hours when I got here. And then I went to like a bodega and found some magic bodega man who gave me some magic medicine that I Googled and found out is not FDA approved. So you can't get it in the US, but you can get it here. And I put it in my belly and it worked. And so we're magically back and I'm back. And so that's good. JT, how was your time getting into London?
Perfect. I got in.
Awesome.
I was fine.
Sick.
By the time that you got in and you were starting to feel good,
we were supposed to leave. Actually, we did leave like 6 hours ahead of you and you beat us here somehow.
I already had seen the sights of London. I was drinking a few pints already yesterday before you even got boots on the ground here.
Hate you for that.
I'm doing great.
2 other things from London, and then we'll talk Titans Ravens. One, my number one takeaway from 2 takeaways from this city. One, it's just New York, but everything's older and a little bit more proper, which is not and a lot of bricks. Yeah. Number 2, there's a lot of towers in this town. Everything's a tower, but also a lot of the towers don't look like towers. I went to the Tower of London this morning, got there. It looked like a fortress, didn't see a tower. Got in there, found out the tower was a tower for its time in 1266 or whatever, but it's like 3 or 4 stories tall. My take is that, like Pluto as a planet, towers should be relegated with time to buildings. If you were a tower in your day 1,000 years ago, but you're 4 stories today, I'm sorry, you're a building now. You don't get to be a planet anymore, Pluto. Does that not make sense? Like, you can't just lie and say you're a tower, but you're a pretty standard building.
I mean, to go one step further, Big Ben is actually not the clock tower, but the bell inside of the clock tower.
This is true, yeah.
So, like, everything here is
also not all that big. It's kind of medium Ben, to be honest.
I was a little underwhelmed by.
Have you been to Disneyland in California before? Like,
I have not.
So I've been there. It's like seeing, because if you've been to Disney World in Orlando, Cinderella's Castle, massive. In Disneyland, they built it in the 60s. It was Walt Disney and like his nephews over a weekend. They like did it. We went to Home Depot and built a castle, and it's Sleeping Beauty's castle. And you get there and you're like, meh.
All right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. We've enjoyed London though.
I have.
We went to see Les Mis tonight on West End. Was so good, fantastic.
Yeah.
The cast had the goods.
We decided to, instead of go to Australia and Europe or in England.
Yeah, our buddy Paul Kaharski went and saw a friendlies match at Wembley Stadium,
which good for them.
fun.
But like
sure.
Les Mis was killer tonight.
It was great.
So
It was awesome.
I wouldn't change that. No
All right,
offense.
I think we've hit our quota on talking about London. I'm sure we'll talk more about it on our Monday show, our Sunday evening show, afternoon. I don't know when, on Sunday after the game when we're talking to you, whatever time it may be. But today we're going to talk a little bit about the Titans Ravens. Very different show structure than usual for a preview show. We're on bare bones setup here, and we're also tired, and so like we're going to talk about the keys here. We usually go into a lot more detail, have a lot more facts for you. If you're looking for a lot of numbers, let me just direct you to an article that we are producing that will be out on Broadway Sports Media, the website broadwaysportsmedia.com, on Saturday morning. The Titans 10, which is the 10 most important, most pivotal facts about each week's matchup, that really are matchup defining statistics that you need to know going into the game. That's where you'll get the numbers, a lot of which are the things we typically go over. Today, we're talking more narrative things, and 2 or 3 things I have on my mind about this game that I want to talk about before we get to the game. The first of which is, there's been a lot of talk about the Titans' red zone woes this year. And in the past 3 years before this season, actually, I believe 4, technically, they've been well above league average in terms of their effectiveness in the red zone. And that is something that this year has really cratered. And there's a lot of different fingers being pointed. Is it new offense with Tim Kelly? Is it this personnel is not quite getting it done? Is it, Derrick Henry doesn't have the efficacy that he used to have in the red zone, just isn't there anymore? Is it that Ryan Tannehill is costing them by not being mobile enough? And like there's a million things you can point to. And I'm not interested in actually getting down to the bottom of it today, because I feel like a lot of times coaches give answers to questions like this during the week, and we ask for like, a really pointed, specific example or a pointed answer. And they give us a generic, like, when it's just sometimes, there's a lot of things that go wrong. Sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. Ultimately, we're all responsible. And it's very coach speaky. And you're like, okay, well, thanks for obfuscating and not giving us an answer. I actually kind of side with the coaches on this one. I went back earlier this week before leaving for London and was kind of looking at each failed red zone attempt this year. I believe they're somewhere in the 30s percentile. I think the 4 years previous to this year, they were averaging in the mid 60s percentile in terms of converting trips inside the 20. Yeah, one of the best for the past 4 years before this in the league of converting red zone trips, getting inside your opponent's 20-yard line into 7 points instead of 3 or 0. And so a lot of the failed red zone attempts, like, there are some common threads in there. The one of the biggest is the fact that they get into the red zone and then put themselves in low conversion scenarios by committing, bad pre-snap penalties, poor judgment, poor discipline, pre-snap penalties, or post-snap penalties. A big holding play, you're suddenly in 1st and 20 and you're behind the sticks. And the way that this offense operates, they're built on more efficiency than explosion. And in the red zone, it's really hard to be explosive. And so it's just kind of, this is one of those teams where you feel like 1st and 20, you're like, okay, it's, okay, time to Nick Folk, come on, start warming up, time to get on out here. I don't really have any faith in you in converting here. So that's one of the bigger trends. Another thing is in the red zone, our buddy Zach Lyons over at Stacking the Inbox and Football and Other F Words wrote about this week. And one of the things he was keying in on, I think he put this on Twitter as well, is that this team, when they go to Derrick Henry in the red zone, have actually this year been really inefficient. And when they've put the ball in Ryan Tannehill's hand in the red zone, they've actually been really efficient. And the problem is they're doing too much of the inefficient thing than the efficient thing, which seems counterintuitive because you've been to Nissan Stadium before. The Titans get inside the 20. The whole stadium gives up the goose and is like, Henry. And it's like, okay, that seems like the intuitive thing to everybody, obviously. Based on efficiency this year, that's not been it. That's not to say that Henry's washed or can't be effective in the red zone, but I think defenses get in, they get backed up on their goal line and they're like, okay, now's the time for us to make you beat us with Ryan Tannehill. We're not going to let Derrick Henry bully his way into the end zone. We're going to shut that down. And I don't know if the Titans just aren't recognizing that and realizing, okay, well, let's put the ball in Ryan Tannehill's hand here. And they're just sticking to their guns with Henry or what it is. But whatever the case, I think that there's a lot of different things that have gone wrong to cause the red zone inefficiency. There's not one thing to point to. My actual point that I'm making in all of this is that I anticipate the Titans getting into the red zone this week against the Ravens 3 or 4 times. That's what I think is going to end up happening. And this, on paper, you're going to be like, wow, bold take, Easton, to make a mathematically sound probability-based prediction that's actually just likely. But a very simple challenge for them, a very simple goal for them in this game, a key to victory here, is you have to convert at least 2 of those red zone trips into touchdowns. I see no path to victory against this Ravens team where you go 1 for 3, 1 for 4, 0 for 3, 0 for 4 in the red zone, and Nick Folk has a big day and you score 10, 13, 16 points. You've got to get 2 touchdowns in this game at least. I don't see them getting into the red zone a bunch against this Ravens team. I really would be shocked if you see them get into the red zone 5 or 6 or 7 times. I think 4 is the most that's going to happen, and they're going to have to be efficient with those trips.
Yeah, I just think, like you said, in years past where they have been super efficient, it's been because they've been so good at getting Derrick Henry like very close into that red zone. And then from 10 yards out, that's where you see Derrick Henry become really, really efficient. But as Pretty Boy Lipschitz says in the chat here, Derrick isn't hitting the holes as hard as he once did. I think there's been a little bit of regression, but also I think it has
the holes
as much to do with the offensive line
where are the holes, man?
As it does with Derrick Henry. However, like you said, they've been hurting themselves. They've been shooting themselves in the foot because of, like you said, penalties that back them up to 1st and 20. And then all of a sudden you're out of the red zone. And that's where it becomes harder for them to really, really capitalize on those situations.
No, I think that is absolutely fair. And I don't want to discredit what Pretty Boy Lipschitz is saying, that Henry, like whatever is the case here, Henry is not as effective in the red zone, bottom line, whether that's him, whether that is the offensive line, whether that is defense is selling out to stop him, and the Titans just have to correct course on that. I don't quite know. Another thing that I know that you are big on this week, and you were big on it, you were talking to me about it before you watched the film this week, while you were enjoying your travel leisures, and I was painfully on the phone with PR for 19 hours. You were watching a lot of the Ravens film from last week, and you saw a lot from rookie Zay Flowers that kind of reminded you of what we saw the Titans face against Colts rookie Josh Downs in week 5. I think that there's an opportunity for him to have a big week against this Titans team. And on the flip side of that, the Titans defense has to have sat in that film room this week, watched what Zay Flowers can do out of the slot as your flanker, as your 2, as your Y in on the outside, and in that short area with that short area burst and quickness that he brings, a lot of the stuff that we loved from Josh Downs. I would argue Zay Flowers is actually just better at those. Like, he's just a better version of Josh Downs, 2 prospects we both really, really liked. The Titans are going to have to adjust from what they did last week to not get shredded in that short area and just sliced and diced by Zay Flowers.
And I think that we heard that from Vrabel earlier this week. Someone asked him a question about Zay Flowers. They said they like the prospect coming out of the draft. They're going.
We know the Titans brought him on visits. We know that they were thinking about him. There's a lot of verified rumors. Like, they were interested in Zay Flowers.
Yeah, and he does basically what, as I was watching the film on both sides with the Ravens offense and the Titans defense, he really does, as you said, in that flanker role, do what Josh Downs does, but a lot better. He's just a lot quicker, a lot more physical in those route running ability than even Josh Downs is, which is kind of crazy to say. But I think the biggest key, as I was watching a lot of this film, is that when you use him in that flanker and you're sending him in motion and you're kind of trying to confuse the defense, that's what happened last week against the Titans. When you keep your corners kind of, for the most part, on their certain side of the field and they start moving around like they did last week, you saw a lot of confusion, and that's where you saw Josh Downs kind of be open. And then once he gets the ball, he's a yards after the catch monster, a lot of missed tackle opportunities. I think Zay Flowers is going to have the ability.
He's kind of that, but better. Like,
that, but better.
Yeah.
So the big thing is that they're going to have communication this week. Communication is key so that you don't get Zay Flowers kind of doing those motion routes where you get him on absolutely nobody and give him space.
Yeah, we'll look at the injury report in a minute, but OBJ coming back for this week's game. You've got Rashad Bateman still out there. I say OBJ coming back. Was he? I don't think he was playing last week.
No, I don't. I don't believe he played last week.
So I'm right about that.
Like you said, Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar.
Rashad Bateman might as well be hurt
Devin
out there
Duvernay,
because he's hurting
know?
the team with the amount of breaking drops and lack of playmaking that he's putting out there as a former first rounder. But I personally view Zay Flowers as the biggest threat for this team in the air in this game. Speaking of in the air, a fascinating conversation with this game. And those of you that are watching with us live, feel free to chime in on the comment section at Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. Find this live stream there. Join the conversation there in the comments. We would love to hear from you, like we've heard from DP and Pretty Boy Lipschitz, Ben, and Austin. Appreciate you guys. Is this going to be a game that's decided on by air or by sea? Is this going to be on the ground and going to be kind of what I think on paper you'd expect from these two teams? And we've seen a storied rivalry between these two. They both have been among the most, I think what's the stat in the last 4 years? They've been the two highest yards per game rushing teams in the league, known for their rushing attack, creative rushing attack, relentless determination to stick with their rushing attack even when things aren't going great out of the gate, and force you to submit in the fourth quarter and win in those trenches. That's what's defined these two teams for a long time. I think it's still largely what defines them today. And so on paper, you'd say, well, yeah, that's what this game's going to be, is it's rushing champ versus rushing champ. Who's going to be the better rushing team? I think there's an opportunity for this game to actually be the opposite, because both teams are so effective on the ground, because that's not a secret to anybody on either coaching staff or either team's player personnel. Like they know that's the case. The Titans coming off of their worst run defense game in 17, 18 games and 20 games in a row.
When you give Zach Moss his career game, you realize you have to go back to the drawing board. And
unless I'm missing something, it's the worst. Yes, it's the worst rushing defense they've had since they allowed Saquon Barkley to hang 200 plus on them in week 1 of 2022. I might be missing one somewhere in there, but that's pretty much what it is. I see no world, assuming Tier Tart's playing. I think the vibes that I'm getting, what we're hearing, again, we'll talk about the injury report, sounds like that's what it's going to be. He's going to at least give it a try. Even if he's not, there's a pride in that locker room. There's a pride amongst those on this defense. They're not going to have that kind of game. I actually don't, as much as people like to make fun of what the Colts last week, the backup running back, he's a good player. He'd been balling before that.
And as I went to watch the film, as Nick Suss was saying, that offensive line played out of their minds last week.
They made him look good. They did. I'm not saying Zach Moss shouldn't get credit for what he did.
Especially on the 56-yard run, I went back and I was like, Nick was totally right.
He had 9 yards before contact.
There really was nothing they could do, because the Colts offense just executed so efficiently on that play with Zach Moss. So I think you're coming into a game here against an offensive line who isn't as good as the Indianapolis Colts are playing right now, but also like Baltimore does have some key pieces on that offensive line that can make it work.
Yeah, they do. I don't trust their rushing personnel, both up front and their running backs available to. It's the threat of those guys plus Lamar Jackson that makes these guys so deadly.
And I think real quick before we move on to why we think that this game could be passing, I think when you say running, these two teams run very efficiently, very differently. Yeah. One, you have Derrick Henry, and you have just like a soon-to-be Hall of Famer running back, just absolutely tearing it up back there.
Yep.
Two, the Ravens are so good at running because of how big of a threat Lamar Jackson is.
Takes a defender off the table every single
He really does. And as I was watching the film last week, Anthony Richardson, they contained him very well. Mm-hmm. But Lamar Jackson does exactly what Anthony Richardson does 10 times better, especially on their RPO.
And I'd imagine he's going to play the whole game.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. And I think that even though they contained Anthony Richardson and, as we said last week, kept the rat in the cage, so to say,
until the rat died. We didn't mean to kill the rat.
We did
not mean to do that. Feel bad about doing that.
This rat, he's in the science lab. He's doing puzzles. He can trick you a little bit more, and get out of that cage.
He knows how to hit the buttons in the right order to get the food to come out. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I think that both these teams have really good ability to, but because these defenses who are pretty good against the run now know how to identify that, that's why we could maybe look to see the passing game be a lot more efficient.
Yeah, they're just the other thing, the other side of the coin there is the passing game. Okay, what's that going to bring to the table? Both of these teams' secondaries are kind of suspect. The Ravens certainly less so than the Titans. The Titans, when is Christian Fulton ever going to be Christian Fulton again? Mm-hmm. If ever, don't know. Certainly some holes in that secondary, as has been the case every single week this year. with the Ravens, it looks like they may be getting some starting safety help back this week in Marlon Humphrey, but you still have had some significant injuries back there and some kind of up and down play. It feels like it's been one of the weaker elements of an otherwise really stout defense, to the point that I think that the Titans are going to have an opportunity to throw. And we saw DeAndre Hopkins, it's hard for a star like that to break out in the Titans uniform last week, have his first big marquee game. Kyle Phillips back last week, very quiet. I asked Mike Vrabel about Kyle Phillips today on a private Zoom that we had that wasn't broadcast. He didn't actually give me much on that, but he went on. At first he was like, he's a slot receiver. We're going to there's only one football, typical Vrabel responses. Then went on to say, just, he's a guy we want to get the ball in his hands. We're looking to get ways to get the ball in Chig's hands, in Kyle's hands, in Tajay's hands. We want the ball in these guys' hands because they can make plays. And we know that he can make plays for us. We know that as a punt returner, he can make plays for us. So he kind of came around on a question he didn't seem to quite like at first. And he kind of gave up the goose on that one. You've got him in the fold. I could see him being an element in this game. NWI and Chris Moore had a quiet game last week too. I mean, every receiver besides NWI did, or besides DeAndre Hopkins did. I just think you're due for some more balance there. And like we pointed out at the beginning of this week in review of last week, there was, a lot of distribution of the ball through the air to non-wide receivers. Tajay getting involved, Derek getting involved, Chig getting involved, Trayvon Wesco getting involved.
Even Josh Wiley.
Yeah.
Big time catch.
All three tight ends, but none of the receivers, because of course, naturally. I think that maybe I think that the Ravens, their linebacking core, Patrick Queen's playing really well.
Yes, he is.
Their linebacking core is playing well, and if they're going to do any simulated pressures, they've got guys up front that can step back into that linebacker role and play a zone, or even carry a man downfield, carry a tight end downfield in coverage and hold up just fine. So I think that the pure receiver realm of possibilities is wider. The range of possibilities is wider. And I could see them having a bigger game for the Titans in this one. And again, we already talked about Zay Flowers. I think that he's going to be a big impact in this game. And with OBJ back, there's room for him to be OBJ.
And I think that one of the big things here, like you said, with Tajay Spears and with Derrick Henry, on the opposite side of the coin, while the Titans defense kind of got a Lamar Jackson light with Anthony Richardson and trying to contain him, I think there's something to be said about how the Steelers started using Jaylen Warren last week, and how that could probably become like Tajay Spears is Jaylen Warren, but better. So they're gonna be looking out on him for this week. So I don't think that's a given, but I think they're gonna continue to try to use Tajay and Derek in that passing attack. We have a couple questions here in the YouTube chat from Tim Lee, who says Titans are facing Colts again in terms of the passing game, but better. Lamar over Richardson, Flowers over Downs, OBJ and Bateman over Pierce, and then Mark Andrews over Jelani. Another piece of it that we didn't talk about, Mark,
doing a good job of crystallizing what we've been saying, Tim. I totally agree.
And I think the biggest thing right here to kind of, I was going to say the biggest thing is the last part of this.
Mark Andrews, sorry.
Well, him but the linebacking core is going to have a big day, because
important day, maybe a bad day. Big questionable.
Big in terms of important. Because as he points out here, Jack Gibbons can't be caught 1v1 with Flowers, kind of like he was caught with Josh Downs last week.
Yeah, so you can't do it. You can actually. You just shouldn't. You shouldn't. And if they do, they're probably going to pay the price for that.
Yeah, and he said one more time, time for Fulton to be ran over by Bateman and called for DPI. As Nick said, something dumb's going to happen in this game.
Happen in this game. I think
of course, it probably could happen to Christian Fulton, and his bad season continues.
I agree. All right, that's going to be it for Titans-Ravens talk in terms of opinion from us. We do want to talk about the injury report again. Kind of a shorter show today, because we're running on fumes. It's very late here.
We did get back a little late. Had some technical difficulties.
We did have some. It's already past midnight here in London. But we do this for you.
But if you do have any questions and have thoughts on this game, please.
Yeah, send them in the chat. Charles Barnes, Easton is going to look. Okay, all right, buddy. This is that guy that everybody's been making fun of on Twitter this week. He's the best scout in the world. He's actually been working for the Titans.
See, I've been drinking some Guinness over here. I've not been paying attention.
Yeah. Appreciate you following the show, Chuck. Good stuff. Let's talk injury report. JT, what do we got? It's certainly a long one for the Titans.
Yes.
3 guys did not travel and were out. The rest of the report relatively clean.
Yeah. So the 3 guys who did not travel with the team this week: wide receiver Treylon Burks, linebacker Luke Gifford, and defensive back Elijah Molden. I think the biggest surprise here continues to be Elijah Molden. So once again, it's another year where Elijah Molden certainly has some very suspect injuries that go on throughout the week and through the first couple of weeks of the season. This time with the hamstring, but all 3 of them did not come over with the team to London.
Right.
2 guys who are questionable but did come over with the team this week: defensive lineman Tier Tart, who is still dealing with that toe injury, and then another one that was quite a surprise this week: center Aaron Brewer with a neck injury,
right,
is also questionable. We can talk about Aaron Brewer first, because we do have a question here in the chat. Maggie Barnes,
what up, Maggie?
Says,
Maggie.
What are your thoughts on Aaron Brewer?
Hey, Maggie, good question. The thoughts are they need him to play. If they don't, this is how I've been stretched thin here in London. I hadn't even really considered the possibility of him not playing until a moment ago when JT asked me, what are they going to do if he doesn't play? And my initial, this is not based on anything I've heard in the building or with the team. My initial guess is that you get Corey Levin in there, who's had some experience with the Titans, playing interior offensive line, playing some center for them. He's a guy that they keep around. They like as a veteran player, serviceable, plug and play in a pinch guy inside. Is he going to be a step down? Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to handicap them, hamstring them a little bit in the running game because of what Aaron Brewer, as kind of a freak athlete, different style of offensive lineman than typical, is able to do for them in the run game. Like it's going to simplify things in the run game and hinder them there. Pass protection, it's a step down, but not a big one in my opinion. He can hold his own, absolutely. So that's what I'm guessing they would do. There's a couple of guys on that team as backups that can play interior offensive line. I really don't think you'd see a Dylan Radins go in there, just because he doesn't. From my understanding, he doesn't have much, if any, interior, center experience. So I think that Corey Levin is my best guess for who they play if he's out. But the biggest questionable here is Tier Tart, and I don't want to overlook what I talked about earlier with they need him for this run game. We said it on Monday's show. We're saying it on, I'm sure we said it on Wednesday's show. We're saying it today. Like, he's the most important run defender on this team, in my opinion. He's a big body, not ground and pound, but like nose in the dirt, nose tackle, who is your stalwart, just dude that's in the way, massive human being that's in the way and going to stop guys in the run game because they're in the way and massive and also freaky athletic and able to swim defenders, chop double teams, and get a hand on and affect the runner early on and not let them get 8 yards of no contact downfield. So he's so important for them to have. But Brewers, he's an important element as well, and I think that the run game suffers the most if he's not in there.
And the big thing here is because the bye is next week. I think with the bye coming up next week, this is kind of telling, because if some of these guys like Gifford and Molden and Burks had the opportunity to maybe have a chance to play, they probably were going to make the trip. Because they didn't make the trip, they're going to probably just, they're telling them, all right, we're going to kind of just get you guys right, go for the bye, and then get going after that. With Tier Tart and Aaron Brewer, I think, especially in Tart's case, I wouldn't be surprised if we see him playing this week, just because of how crucial he kind of is to that defensive front.
Yep.
But maybe more in a limited sense, kind of play him in limited snap shares, I think, because if he is still dealing with that toe, it may be important to kind of play half the game, nursing that, but also he is a big element.
Yeah, no, I agree. Let's see. I see Charles, you're still around. Appreciate you still watching, man. It's cool. What else we got? Who do we have that is not listed that we can talk about the importance of them and some guys that were injured during the week, missed some practice time, but looks like they're going to be a go.
Yeah, Danico Autry and Amani Hooker kind of popped up on the injury report on Thursday, but they
couple of hand issues. It looks like fingers and thumbs.
Yeah, but they're full participants here on Friday, so they are good to go. DeAndre Hopkins once again, and Derrick Henry all taking those veteran days throughout the week, and then Jeffrey Simmons also kind of a veteran kind of move there is good to go this week.
Yep. Good news. All those guys very important.
We can talk about the Ravens as we talked about them as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
OBJ, good to go.
Good to go.
Marlon Humphreys finally back.
Good to go.
How much he will really impact that game after not playing for a while. It makes the Titans' job passing harder, but
Sure.
how much does it really impact? I think that's a wait and see game there. But those are the two on the
another
Ravens.
starting lineman, I believe, right? Or was that a backup lineman?
Back.
Okay, just kidding. Sorry. They had one guy ruled out who's totally escaping my memory. I will look that up when we're talking about the best bet gauntlet and get back to you. But first, let's get to the best bet gauntlet, which is our final segment of today's show, where we're going to make some money for us, make some money for you guys. Had our first down week of the year last week. Went 3-7, I believe, on the day. 3-7, bad day. Despite 3-7, which is a horrendous record on the day. On the year, the show is still 66%, 30-20 on the year. JT with the decisive lead, leading me by 6 wins right now. I got a lot of season left to catch up, but I got some work to do. You've been on a heater. I've been pretty back and forth. But
cooled down a little bit, but
yeah, excited about this week. That's we're going to have some down weeks like that. You got to trust the process, trust the aggregate here. Again, 66% coming off of a 3-7 week. We're making money almost every single week, and there's going to be some that we don't, and we're going to make it back the next week and the next week. So that's what we're looking to do today. The theme of today's best bet gauntlet, we've kind of talked about this beforehand. It's a concept in betting that I've seen popularized by Stuckey, who's a very popular, famous pro gambler with the Action Network. He talks about catching the falling knife, which is an important, sharp gambling habit, important, sharp gambling mindset of all of these teams, not all of them, but many of them over the course of the season are going to be falling knives. They're going to be sharp and dangerous and pointy and stabby objects falling to the ground. And it's your responsibility as a bettor to try to catch that falling knife. If you catch it too early, you're going to get cut. But if you catch it at just the right time, you're going to catch that handle and save your toes, and it's going to be a good day for you. And so catching a team that is just spiraling, just can have nothing go right. The Giants, for example, a team that we're not betting. We are not trying to catch that knife this week. Maybe it's the week to catch the knife on them. We're not taking that risk.
I don't have the balls.
I'm not drunk enough to do it, frankly, but we do have some other teams that would seemingly be full-blown disasters, and we're going to pick them anyways this week. Yes. And I still have the T-box, so I will go first. My first pick of the week is Detroit minus 3.5. This bet is as simple as betting the hot hand, and I'm afraid for Detroit in general that they're going to be the team that kind of starts a little bit too hot this year and flames out down the tracks. I really hope not, but they really can do no wrong right now.
Certainly like some sort of baseball team that also was too hot.
Don't know what you're talking about. Yep. We're talking about football right now. Okay. So anyways, in terms of football, yeah, I like I hate you. I like Detroit this week plus the 3.
-3.
Some more comments. Austin, Big Jeff gonna eat. Elliott, Marlon Humphrey is Derrick Henry's favorite lineman. Good pull, good reference there. Yeah, so the Lions this week are a good bet to cover the 3 against
-3, correct?
-3, excuse me, -3 against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is another hot team in October, in September. I just think Detroit is kind of another beast for them. They've capitalized. They've got some wins against some suspect teams, especially defensively. Detroit's defense, again, I don't know if it's sustainable, but right now they are playing really, really, really well. They're getting fantastic play out of that rookie safety out of Alabama. They're getting fantastic play out of their second-year pass rusher in Aiden Hutchinson. They are really firing on all cylinders, and on offense, Jared Goff has been fantastic. Now, they're not in a dome, but they are in Tampa Bay, where the weather should just be delicious. Should be nice. I think that they win that game by over a field goal.
Yeah, with my first pick here, we do it every week, and I decided that this one was a bit too tasty to pass up. I'm taking the two-tone blue Tennessee Titans plus 4.5 this week. Obviously, it's a little...
Throw it on the ticker. 5 weeks in a row.
5 weeks in a row here. There's a couple stats here. One, obviously, with these London games, they're very tricky, but the public usually does not know how to bet these games, and considering that the public is on the Ravens this week, it makes me feel even a lot better about this game. Some stats about Lamar Jackson in particular. He's not lost back-to-back games since 2021, going 5-0 over that span. But in those in these games, it's still not like he could win, but it's not like they're winning by a lot. Lamar Jackson over the past 3 seasons is 6-0 against the spread as an underdog, but 7-16 against the spread as a favorite, including 4-16 when favored by more than 3 points. The Titans this week plus 4.5. Also, Mike Vrabel as a home underdog, even though it's not really home. If you believe
Every
in that
week,
juju,
tap the sign.
just tap the sign.
sign.
I think that's a lot of points. I think this is like we said on Wednesday. It's a gross, kind of very gutsy Baltimore Ravens versus Titans matchup. Something dumb's going to happen.
It's
and
the kind of game that feels like it finishes on a field goal.
Yeah,
to me. I think the 4.5 is just too many
points.
points.
How it feels as well.
I think it's too many points. Speaking of injury reports, by the way, I said I'd pull that up. The Ravens, I knew that they had a starter out. Adafe Owe, outside linebacker, won't be playing. So some opportunity in the middle for guys like Tyjae Spears, for guys like Kyle Phillips to maybe expose some backup there. But that's an important one that is out. They have more important guys back, like we mentioned. OBJ, Jadeveon Clowney, who we didn't mention, former Titans legend, coming around the edge. And who else do they have? Oh, Marlon Humphrey back. So there's that. My second pick of week 6 in the best bet gauntlet. I'm taking New Orleans -1.5. As much as I'm
betting against the wagon, that is the Houston
I know,
Texans.
and that's kind of why I'm doing it. So we've reached the point where I feel like regression is due for CJ Stroud. I've loved what he's done. I think he's been really fantastic. You know it's coming eventually. If it's not this week, it is coming. Not to say that he's going to fall apart and be bad, but like every rookie season has its ups and downs. You hit some rookie walls. You hit some moments where a defensive coordinator kind of figures you out, finds something you're not good at, and forces you to do it. And the Saints defense has been really, really fantastic this season so far. One of the better defenses in the league, in my opinion. I think this is going to be the biggest test for him. I think if you want to throw a little money on some props, first interception of his NFL career could be a real possibility for CJ this week. I don't know what those numbers are, but he's not thrown one yet through 5 games. I'm sure it's probably plus odds there for him to throw one interception. I think that New Orleans gets it done on the road. They're coming off a big win. I understand that, but what does road environment really mean for Houston? And I think that the New Orleans is simply a better team right now that's going to outlast them and probably win by a field goal.
Yeah, next pick here, I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings -3. Once again, I'm buying or selling, I guess, on the hype of the Chicago Bears and how Justin Fields has looked the past couple weeks. And it's not more because I don't believe that the Chicago Bears are improving. It's just the Chicago Bears in divisional matchups have been a nightmare when it comes to betting. The Bears have been an incredible fade in divisional matchups the past couple seasons. They've gone 5-19-1 against the spread since 2019, losing a better 100. If you bet $100, you lose $1,400 if you bet on them in those divisional matchups.
That's tough right there.
Not looking to lose some money here.
It's not a good number.
Despite Justin Jefferson being out, a lot of teams are able to run on the Chicago Bears. So I think Alexander Mattison will have a nice day. As Kevin O'Connell said earlier this week, Jordan Addison is all sets go to be the wide receiver 1 this week, assuming he can still play. But if he does, he's going to be their wide receiver 1, and he's looked very impressive this year so far. TJ Hawkinson is also there. So I'm not thinking that one of the most pass happy offenses is going to regress just because
you lose no wide receiver 1. Yeah, you lose a stud.
JJ is not there. So give me the Vikings -3.
I like that pick. With pick 3 in the week 6 best bet gauntlet, give me Dallas -2.5. I think that getting this under the 3 is important here. Dallas, they are on the road playing the Chargers this week. Battle between 2 of, I think, the worst coaches in the league, in Mike McCarthy and Brandon Staley. I think Brandon Staley is a significantly worse coach. One of those guys has a ring. One of them is probably not going to be employed much longer if things continue the way that they're continuing, in my opinion. Not wishing that on him. Certainly not. I hope that I'm wrong and he has employment, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that Dallas got kicked in the teeth last week, and they have been for a long time a team, JT, that beats up on bad teams. I'm not saying the Chargers are a bad team, but I don't think they're a very good team. I think they're a streaky team. I think they're a team that can absolutely be beaten up on if given the opportunity. And I think that Dallas has the most motivation in the world to prove that what they put up against San Francisco last week, a team that has big boyed them in a number of big spots in the past couple of years, and Kyle Shanahan has just been their dad every time they've played. I think that they're looking to prove, hey, we're a good team, and let's beat up on a team that folks normally don't consider a bad team. And the Chargers, like if we pound the Chargers, I think that will get some folks to look at that San Francisco game a little bit differently. I'm just down on the Chargers. I think that Dallas is the better team top to bottom. And I think that the motivation factor here, the spot here for them is huge. I think that they win by at least a field goal. Wouldn't shock me if they blow them out.
Yeah, my next pick here is one that feels so ugly, but I have to do it here. I'm taking Colts +4 right now. Wish I could have got it at 4.5. Would have felt a lot better. But the Colts are headed to Jacksonville in this divisional game. They're not a divisional home dog, but still a divisional dog nonetheless, who has been playing a lot better than people's expectations this season. Of course, Anthony Richardson will not be in there, but Gardner Minshew will take his place, who also helped the Colts kind of upset the Baltimore
big
Ravens.
Of a downgrade is it right now?
I don't know if it's that
I
big
don't
of a
think it's a
downgrade.
big downgrade right now. We love Anthony Richardson. I don't think right now it's a big
Regardless,
downgrade.
I think this one is big because you have to remember that that Jacksonville has been in London for the past 2.5 weeks. Coming back to the States now, I'm not saying that they're not going to be ready.
Have you seen the number on this, by the way? Or
No.
I forgot. Pardon me. The exact stat I'll probably tweet out at some point between now and Sunday. I saw earlier, I think yesterday, that teams that have come back from London and foregone their bye, because that's what the Jags did. They were in London for 2 weeks. They're coming back, not doing their bye right away like the Titans are in week 7. Teams that have done that and come back have failed to cover the spread. I think that they're like 1-6 all time, and they've gotten blown out a handful of times. It's not a very good idea to do that. And it's what they're trying to do after 2 weeks in London where the body fully adjusted. So now they're trying to fully adjust back.
Yeah. That's also a good stat, but I just think it's a divisional game. They played them close last time with Anthony Richardson in the week 1. This team has only gotten better since then. You get Jonathan Taylor back, even though the Jaguars were very good at stopping the run last week. How big of a factor will that be? We'll have to see. But this Colts team continues to play better and better, and it feels like all of these AFC South teams are just closer together in terms of how good they are than a lot of people realize. So give me the Colts with the points.
I like the pick. My next 2 picks are gross, but I need you to hear me out. And they're very gross for different reasons. My first pick is my 4th pick in the best bet gauntlet for week 6. I'm taking New England +3. First of all, I think that you're going to get this number at 3.5. I think you're getting the hook if you wait to bet it until Sunday. So I would wait until Sunday to bet it to see if it goes up to 3.5. But New England is on the road playing the Raiders, getting a field goal. This is, like I said at the top of the segment, this is catching the falling knife. New England seems like a hapless, listless, lost team. And they kind of have been for the last 2 weeks. And on the whole, they kind of seem like that may be the case. I just don't see that team rolling over against what I think is a pretty fraudulent team in Las Vegas. They've gotten some gifts in wins, in my opinion. And they're kind of frisky at times. But in general, I think that this New England defense is going to give that offense problems. And I think that New England's offense simply has to improve. A number that I saw, again, that if this was a regular week show and I had a bunch of notes in front of me, I would have written down. But this is another set I will go find before Sunday and put out there. Teams that in 2 consecutive games have failed to score 6 or more points. In that 3rd game, after 2 consecutive no scoring games, have scored on average. It was a number is an average north of 20. It was in the 20s. And that's a lot of points against a Raiders team that I just don't think might be able to hang against that defense. So I think New England is a catch the falling knife spot. Not to mention it's a lot of sharp action on that this week. A lot of professionals like this gross number. So we're going to try it. Maybe we get the blade. I'm thinking we get the handle. Give me New England plus the field goal. Wait for the hook. Get the hook on this one.
That is very gross. My next pick here is also gross for a different reason, and that's because I'm betting against Desmond Ridder at home, which that's so...
The immovable object, Desmond Ridder at home.
He has not lost or failed to cover the spread against... or he's not lost yet at home in his college.
Just outright, I think.
And straight
professional
up,
career.
Against the spread is a different story. So he has lost against the spread. However, this is more of a coaching mismatch, I think, this week in just terms of Ron Rivera this week. Being an underdog, Ron Rivera kind of thrives He's 58, 43, and 2 against the spread as an underdog in his career, and coming off extended rest, like he did last week when he played against Chicago and kind of got bodied last week against that Chicago team. He is 12, 6, and 1 against the spread. I think this team is a lot better than what they showed in Chicago last week. And I don't think that this Atlanta team is as good as people are giving them credit for right now. So give me the Commanders plus 2.5.
I dig it. My last pick, my 5th pick of the week 6 best bet gauntlet. I'm doing something gross for a very different reason than my 4th pick. I'm taking a very, very square side, but I think that the public is right on this one. Taking San Fran minus 10. I don't want it 10.5. So find it now at minus 10. They're playing at Cleveland this week, and we've got no Deshaun Watson again. Kind of weird, his shoulder situation. He's been out for a couple of weeks despite being cleared by doctors 2 weeks ago to play. Clearly, he's just not feeling it. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, rookie out of UCLA, 5th round pick. DTR is playing for them again this week. We saw him get pretty badly beaten up in that Ravens game in a very, very impossible situation for a rookie on short notice. He's got some more notice this week.
They're playing PJ Walker this week.
Or sorry, is it PJ?
Yeah,
I didn't see this announcement.
Yep.
That does not change my opinion. That does not. Trying to think the last time we saw PJ Walker in action.
Carolina last year.
Yeah,
against the Falcons
no,
team
it doesn't.
Is not as good.
It doesn't change my mind. So did they add him this week, or is
yeah,
he okay?
They
So I actually like this better for my argument. Here's the argument. Here's the number.
XFL quarterback versus the San Francisco team.
Yeah, and here's the thing. This San Francisco team with Brock Purdy starting the last 8 games that he has started in a row, they have scored 30 or more points. The anti-Titans, 8 consecutive games of 30 plus points. That means in order for the Browns to cover this spread, assuming that they continue that, and you say, well, this Browns defense is a better defense. Yes, it's a very good defense, but they put up 30 on some really good defenses in the last 8 games. I went back. I promise. I think that they're still capable of putting up 30 against this defense, especially with how much the defense might be on the field for Cleveland and how much the offense for San Francisco is going to be on the field, because I don't think that Cleveland offense with brand new XFL quarterback PJ Walker coming in is going to be a big dramatic difference for them. In order for him to cover that spread, that means PJ Walker is going to have to put up at least 20 points. I don't see that happening. Yeah. I think that this is like a 27-6, 27-9 kind of game. I think that San Francisco wins incredibly comfortably again. Give me them covering the 10 big smackaroonies.
So in the chat here, at least, we have Elliot Chafin saying, I've got the Browns this week.
Chafin. So how dare you? Elliot Chaffin. You know this too. Yeah, you know this too. You were in a wedding party with him.
I was. My apologies. Regardless.
I still like it though, because it's funny.
Here's the what we're kind of doing this week. Me and you are wrong Browns money line. Oh, okay. Well, that's certainly a pick this week.
High roller. We
are kind of taking the different stance on the same kind of stat this week, so it'll be interesting to see if it plays out for one of us or if it doesn't play out for any of us. And with this week, it's the grossest pick, but I think I'm going to get the handle here because I like the trends. Jets plus 6.5 against the Philadelphia Eagles.
And here's you see why. That was the knife.
Yeah.
Good luck catching it, bud.
We'll see if I have some cuts on my hands after this week, but here's why I'm taking the Jets this week. A lot of sharp action on them already this week.
I've seen
one of the biggest sharps action games this week. Home dogs versus an undefeated straight-up road team are 61, 38, and 1 against the spread in the last decade, and 88, 53, and 2 against the spread since 2010. So this works for the Browns. We're going up against the San Francisco 49ers, and then the Jets going up against this Eagles team. I think the Jets continue to play better and better, even though they played a pretty tic-tac kind of just very easy Broncos team last week. They continue to get better and better. The defense is going to be good. I'm expecting the Eagles to win, but I think this is a closer game than people realize. So I'm going to take those points plus 6.5.
All right, I dig it. In recap for the week 6 best bet gauntlet, JT has Tennessee plus 4.5, Minnesota minus 3, the Colts plus 4, Washington plus 2.5, and the New York Jets plus 6.5 points. For my turn, I went with for my part, that's what I was looking for. For my part, I'm taking Detroit minus 3, New Orleans minus 1.5, Dallas minus 2.5, New England plus 3, and San Francisco minus 10 Those are our 10 picks for week 6, looking for a bounce back spot. And that is our show. Appreciate everybody tuning in with us live here from London. It is now 12:36 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Is that where we are right now? I don't even know. London time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Greenwich
I think it's GMT.
Is it really?
I think I
I'm
could
not
be
sure.
wrong. We're nearer that, but it's London time. It's past midnight, and we're gonna go to bed now. You all enjoy your evening, your Friday evening. Go out and do something fun. Enjoy your weekends. Enjoy waking up at 9:30, 8:30 Central, 8:30 Central Standard Time to watch Titans Ravens here in London. It'll be 2:30 our time, so we'll be wide awake and ready to go for that game. We'll be covering everything from that game, at the game, from the press box, talking to players and coaches afterwards in the locker room, and then we will be live later on Sunday, probably between. I'm gonna guess maybe in the middle of the early window, maybe between the early window and the late window. At some point that day, midday in the afternoon, we'll be talking Titans live here from London. So until then, have a great weekend. For producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. We'll talk to you on Sunday.